So did y'all want us to root for these three young men or not? Because honestly, in the end, I just wound up confused. Was I supposed to care or what? Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Tyra here with another struggle review, here to discuss Gully. Now this movie is from 2021. It stars Kelvin Harrison, Jacob Lattimore, Jonathan Majors, a lot of heavy hitters here. Now before I get into why I feel like this film could have had such a bigger message, it wasn't executed the best way that it could have been, and it just really left me confused on the characters at hand. I need you guys to drop down and subscribe to my channel and like this video. I'm going to give you guys a moment to do that, and then we're going to come back and discuss all things stress. This movie had me like stressed, like, you know when you watch some stuff and it just upsets you, like, it didn't say that in the comments. Like, if you're gonna comment a movie and make a suggestion, tell me that it's gonna leave me stressed in the comments. Stressed with a K. Stressed. Now that you guys have hopefully subscribed to see more of me, let's get into this movie. Before we jump into the movie, I have to get a shout out to the subscriber who paid for it and requested this review. Thank you so much. You were all of that. All of that. All that. This is all that. Now, getting into the movie, beforehand, I knew absolutely nothing about this movie. I had never even heard of the movie until the subscriber requested it, but it was directed by Nabil Elderkin. He didn't have a lot of credits to his name as far as directing, but he does have a lot as far as a video director, and I think that speaks to some of the angles and shots that we do get in the movie. The movie looks really well, and some of the things that are happening are really creative and haven't quite been done before. It wasn't, you know, a bore to look at. But between that and Amber Heard also stars in this movie. She has, you know, a really small role, but with all the negative stuff surrounding her in association with her whole situation with Johnny Depp, I can see why this movie didn't blow up. Now we spend the very beginning of the movie being introduced to three friends. We have Jesse, Calvin, and Nikki. Now, they all seem to be a bit lost. They don't prioritize school. They don't listen to their parents, really any forms of authority. We have Nikki, who for the most part in the beginning, it seems like, you know, he's a little bit more balanced out. He cares, you know, about his family, and though his mom, you know, may be one of those moms who are going astray, going down the wrong path of, you know, maybe prostitution and drugs, he cares about his family and his up-and-coming girlfriend's pregnancy. And we also have Jesse here. We don't really get a lot on him in the beginning. Him and this, you know, kind of mysterious backstory. You just feel uneasy about it. He lives with a white man, and we don't see anyone else who looks like him, and there's no presence of a mother. Then we also have Calvin, who is instantly a very uneasy character. He seems, you know, temperamental. All he cares about is skateboarding. Seems a little mentally ill and really detached from reality. And I'm just sitting there in the beginning just watching like, oh my God, he seems like the one to watch for. Those other two might want to get away from him because they're the ones with the sense. Now we also get into a side plot here with our Jonathan Majors characters. He's supposed to jail, and they do have some moments here where he is kind of peeking in on the boy's life, and they do show us that they have some history, but it just did not gel well for me, and it almost felt like kind of watching two separate movies at times. But boy, did Jonathan Majors deliver. Everyone here, for the most part, as far as acting, did a really good job. It was almost like seeing these really good performances in a movie that didn't deserve it. But we're getting into Jonathan Majors. He is that, ex-G, triple OG, who just got out of prison, and he wants nothing more than to not go back. Like, I will cut some yards, take out some trash, do whatever I have to do. But what I will not do is get back up with the old gang and, the activities that got me sent away in the first place, which was him being sent away for murder. Now, there is supposed to be, in the side plot, these three boys kind of looking up to him as, something to be. And, he went out like a man. He, did a manly thing by taking someone else's life. But it just didn't, they tried. Now, as we get deeper into the boys' lives, we realize that all of them have a history of some sort of violence. We have Calvin here, whose mother is Robin Givens, looking like Robin Givens. Don't you just love her? Always looking good. But you see that she is trying to, be heavy on her son, going to school, taking his medication, but she can only do so much. And everywhere he turns, Calvin just feels like, there's somebody not listening to him. You see that there is something mentally going on there, and he's always talking about, going to the beach, going to, Venus. I'm gonna just it's almost like he feels like he's kind of superhuman, and he sees the world differently. But with him seeing everything differently, he's also really, really goddamn violent. Getting into all this history of violence, every single friend here has some sort of history in violence in some way in their backstory. We get into Jesse. I feel like it took me longer than it should have to realize, he's not just quiet, he's mute. I was like, he's the quiet friend. No, Jesse here is mute, and you sense these undertones in the story before we, actually realize what happens. There are these flashes and kind of not full-blown flashbacks, but this imagery that he's seeing to let us know, something here is not right. Because for the better part of the film, I just assumed that, he was adopted or something. I was just like, what was really going on, child? I wasn't expecting that. Now, what these boys have in common is their love for each other. They feel like if we don't have each other's back, we don't have anything. They're not all just super close to their family. They are their family in their eyes. We also get into them playing these video games. Now, right away, the video games are seen as kind of, escapism. It was really giving Grand Theft Auto. But they're escaping in these video games. It's just these are some things that I would really want to do and really want to act out. They are in love with these games. This is pretty much all they want to do besides, roaming the streets, getting into, little activities and whatnot. They love these video games. And we get right into our real first act of violence to let us know, everybody's off. When we get into Nikki. Now, at first I thought Nikki was the one with the sense. No. Nikki not only, has this strong history of violence, courtesy of his father, who committed, whole Amber Heard here. She's a whole thot. She's thotting and bopping all up in this Los Angeles neighborhood. And, she's a prostitute and has been displaying this behavior in front of Nikki for pretty much his whole entire life, and still is now. At which, he sees his dad beat these two guys to death, and he goes to prison. It's just such a history of fucked up behavior in these boys' lives, which really make you sympathize with them in that moment. But once we realize that Nikki has a baby on the way, for a black girlfriend, the family isn't feeling it, they're chasing him off, and the first thing he does is take his stress out on, this innocent bystander. Getting into that, a lot of them are taking their frustrations out right in the neighborhood that they live in, and it pulls you out of the story because it's just really, y'all letting these two knuckleheads, I'm not gonna say two because Jesse was just there. Nobody's gonna do anything. There's, first of all, there's no charge. It's they are just made to just roam free without any real repercussions for so long. It just didn't seem realistic that Jacob Lattimore was in here setting shit up and ain't nobody do nothing. But okay. They are very, very protective over each other, especially Jesse, with him being mute and them kind of treating him as if, you know, he's kind of defenseless at moments. But we have a scene with him in Travis Scott's video store. Yes, child, Travis Scott was here. He's also an executive producer on the film. And Calvin just whole ass trash, terrorized the whole store and flips everything. And, you know, like, don't talk about the homie. Like, try me, I dare you. And it's just like, they're just able to do these things. And it just didn't seem realistic that this would even go on. But whatever. But this is, you know, from what we can see, their first real big act of violence as a group. And it just escalates from there. Now, we also have Terrence Howard here. He is playing a homeless man who is clearly unmedicated himself and suffering from some form of mental illness. And I felt like throughout the entire movie, he was here to be not only reflective as far as the, you know, surroundings and drop his little Terrence Howard as, you know, the babbling homeless man, like, he plays the rambling crazy character to a T. But I felt like he was here to be a reflection of Calvin. And even though Calvin and himself are clearly mentally unstable and are both quite unmedicated from what we can see, they also have a lot of say and have a different vision as far as, you know, the world is concerned. But when you listen, everything that they had to say made sense in some way. And I felt like the movie was trying to tell us, you know, don't be so dismissive of people who are struggling with mental illness. If you just stop and listen or stop and care, you know, it makes a big difference. So by the time we get to the boys just completely kind of being bored with just playing video games inside the house, we get into let's take the game outside. Everything becomes a whole Grand Theft Auto video game down to the imagery. We already had the avatars in the game looking like them at one point, so they start to, you know, get not delusional, but start to kind of feel invincible. And we get into them beating on random people, robbing people, taking drugs, stealing drugs, all in the neighborhood where they live. It's just like, ain't nobody gonna call nobody. They are so aggressive, so violent, beating people senseless, harassing people, taking drugs, doing stunts, chasing down cars, invading people's homes. Like, every step of the way, they're like going up a notch. It's like, okay, we went up, we completed this mission, now we get a car, now we get these drugs, now we, you know, pick up these random ass strangers and have sex in it. Like, it was just a whole total video game. Now, with them for the most part harming innocent people who they feel have wronged them in some way and going on this whole, you know, charade as if it's a video game, they just seem like whole ass psychopaths. But on the other hand, they still give us, you know, those elements of those history of violence for the other two, just like they gave us for Nicky and his childhood, his upbringing with his dad and his mom. We have Calvin, who is not only, you know, suffering from some type of mental illness, he has his dad who's giving him that mentality of, you know, if you want to take something, you know, claim it, you gotta, you know, these real strong words from D. Ray Davis. Up at which we have a cop pull him over and kills his dad right in front of him, and that's, you know, his traumatic experience there. And then we get into goddamn Jesse. The whole story takes a whole turn when we learn about Jesse via our Jonathan Majors character, who has been running around this whole film just trying to, you know, live righteous, speak out positivity, try to influence the boys in a positive way, mainly the Calvin character. But it's just like all shit hits the fan when he, along with the audience, we realize that Jesse is not only mute, but he is being sexually assaulted by this man who happens to have kidnapped him. Child, I tell you, I just was like, what? They added a whole nother layer to the story about pretty much protecting our black boys, protecting children in general. We have Jesse as a young boy in the washing chair with his mom. There is a bystander there, an Asian guy, who sees the mother walk off, sees this man walk up for a split second, take the kid and just run off. And from this very tender age of 5, 6, whatever, he has been held in captivity by this man in this, you know, Los Angeles neighborhood, and it has gone unnoticed. It has gone unnoticed by anyone in the surroundings, friends, neighbors. nobody noticed anything. And it's just like, what the hell? Now, I know that Jesse being mute from the trauma was, you know, like he couldn't say anything to anybody, but still, like, for nobody to notice and for nobody to really protect him, even with Jonathan Majors' character, you know, looking in the window, and it's just like, what the, like, oh yeah, I'm gonna call the police, you need to get, like, nobody noticed that this young man was there, held in captivity by this white man who has a whole nother family off somewhere. He has just been here in this world of sexual abuse for years, and nobody gave a damn. Nobody cared enough he was just mute. That was really fucking sad. So now our three friends who are already running around being careless, abusive, sadistic in some ways, they were already at a 10. So once they find out what happened to Jesse and, you know, sought to seek vengeance and, you know, kill Mr. Charlie, how could this? I just did not understand how it just went that unnoticed. Even though Jesse was mute, I guess it was just supposed to speak to how some things could be happening right under your noses. Nobody for the most part was really paying any deep attention to all three of these kids. They were pretty much on their own. I mean, we did have Calvin in his situation with his mother, but I felt like he needed a lot more help and a lot more than she could offer, with him being so, like, Calvin was gone. But on the flip side, we also have our Jonathan Majors character, who is not only trying to influence the boys, but he has this loving, supportive, always their mother. And I think they were trying to say a lot with his story, as far as, you know, him building a space, sort of like a little home in the backyard. And it was like, you know, nobody's given me an opportunity since I've gotten out. It's hard just to maintain being an ex-con. I need a space for myself where I can live and just be. I need support and love from someone like my mom, or, you know, there's really nowhere to go. And I think that was supposed to be a versus type of thing with his life and his upbringing and the support system that he had versus the boys. They didn't really have that aspect in their life. Calvin kind of had it, but with him going untreated for so long, he was just too far gone to even recognize the you know, the love and support that he had from his mom, and continued to feel like he had nobody outside of his freaking skateboard that he just, like, Lord, ran over the skateboard, boy lost his mind. But once we freaking get into them seeking vengeance and it just being it, I'm like, oh, this is what we're left with. We're left with these young men who've already been so reckless, so caring, not likable in the beginning because they were doing such harsh things. And I don't think that the backstory and the history that they gave us any warranty to just be like, well, it's okay. You know, they're like, I didn't really have compassion for these boys. I think the movie wanted us to, based off of what they had went through prior. Even, you know, more so with Jesse. And Jesse is kind of our main character here. And we only have compassion for him because it's like, okay, well, he was there, but he didn't really interact. He didn't really physically go out of his way to harm anybody. He was just there, you know, to tag along and be down with his friends that he thought cared for him. But we spent a lot of time with Calvin and a lot of time with Nikki. And the way that they go, like when they went to seek vengeance on this man, rolled up in his home, blew it, killed the man, sodomized the man, like, it was a whole lot. So when we get back into reality and we leave the game, and it's just like we're left with these three young men that I know for sure the movie and the writers wanted us to care about and feel for, and I just didn't. I was very much so conflicted. I saw and heard what they were trying to say, but I didn't really feel sorry for anyone's circumstances outside of Jesse's. I couldn't identify or just feel like they were doing some really harsh shit, and it was also, you know, the thing of karma. Everything that they did came back on them eventually. So when we end with, you know, Nikki being arrested for a crime that they committed and the car that they stole and him being sent to prison, and we also end with our Calvin character, we have Terrence Howard there, who is like speaking everything into fruition and kind of like on this counter type thing with Calvin, and they're on the same kind of wave, and it just seemed like that they both knew. We have all these scenes of Calvin just speaking as if, you know, I'm already dead, I'm not gonna be here much longer. Like, I knew like he was gonna transcend and go to Venus type thing. And for him to be shot because of, you know, a crime that he committed, and we have Jesse kind of take this cake that his mom gave to him, and it was kind of like someone, an officer or someone in the army or dead, like it was like some honorable thing. I was like, and she's just so broken, like, oh my god, like what, like your son was mentally sick and he was just meant to be out and roam as he pleased all night in the streets. Like, nobody was really taking care of their children. So that's why I feel like the Jonathan Majors situation with his mom was so important to the movie, but everything wasn't wrapped up so well for me to care. The only person's story who made sense was Jesse, in the way that, you know, they finally saw vengeance and killed the dude, and when his friends are killed and arrested, he's pretty much left with himself. And we go back to that opening scene of him on the beach and him kind of releasing everything and just feeling free at that point, and he lets out that huge scream. But his story ties more together because we get that flashback of him in the washateria with his mom, and you know, somebody stepping up and saying something, and instead of that man kidnapping him, he's walking away. And it's just like, I don't have to choose this to be my life story. I don't have to stay in this dark place. I can change. My situation in my mind has changed. I'm not going to carry that with me anymore, and it's not going to keep me mute. I'm going to speak. That makes sense. I like the way we even have Terrence come in on some Matrix shit, talking about the red pill. You know what? We ain't gonna talk about that. But Jesse's story collectively made sense. Those other two, as far as wanting them to be someone else that we had compassion for and identify with that because of their upbringing, their history of violence, everything that they've seen in their life, their, you know, support as friends, it did not come across. I was just like, well, I mean, what did they expect? Like, look how you guys were leading your life. Look what you guys were out here doing. So I wasn't quite sure what they wanted me to do with that. Well, you guys, that was my review for Gully. I was really conflicted here with this story because I feel like they wanted to be really deep and say a whole lot, but the story for the most part was just kind of lacking. I felt like the characters needed a little bit more depth aside, because those acts of violence, we put a whole lot into that. We got to see a whole lot of that. But as far as the side that we were supposed to be compassionate for, I don't think we dived in deep enough for us to still relate and feel compassionate for these boys outside of all the violent acts that we were seeing them commit. We needed some more of that. A little bit more. But I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Please comment below if you have seen this movie. I would love to hear your take on what you thought about this film. I didn't think that this was the best thing I ever seen, definitely. It wasn't the worst, but it just wasn't the greatest either. But I look forward to reading you guys' comments. I see you guys for my next review. Bye.